and welcome to another tutorial by Happy Cloud Solutions. Today we will be starting a DevOps series. We are going to be looking at various tools that are used in delivering a DevOps project. And as you can see here, it says episode 1. So we're going to start this episode by introducing what we're going to do in this series. And then we're going to have an overview of Jira, which is a DevOps tool that I'm going to explain here. And then we're going to look deeply, we're going to take a deep dive into Git and also finish it up with a demonstration. That's a demo on Git. Right. So this is what we're going to be working with. This is basically the DevOps cycle that we will be using for this DevOps series. So in the DevOps cycle, we have the plan phase, code, build, test, deploy, operate, monitor, and then the integration phase brings it all together. So you see these different tools that are beside it, like Jira for planning, Git for coding, Gradle, Selenium, Jenkins, Docker, Jeff, Ansible, Nagios. So for these various tools, there are going to be various individual videos that are going to explain what they are and a demonstration on how to use it. The last video in this series is now going to show a full-blown project that utilizes all these tools. Okay, so if you stay with us to the end, you're going to see a full-blown project on how to integrate all these tools together to make something for the real world scenario. All right. So starting, we're going to look at Jira software. So Jira is basically used in the planning phase for DevOps, and Jira is basically an agile project management tool. All right. And with Jira, you can do things like run your sprints because it has Kanban boards, it has the Scrum templates, it has the boards, the backlog, all those kind of things are available in Jira. There are also aspects of Jira that you can use to, create tickets, respond to tickets, resolve incidents, change tracking and stuff like that. So basically, Jira is a software as a service tool. So it's a SaaS tool. All you have to do is to go online. That's this link that's provided here. And then you can sign up for free. Okay, so the free subscription allows for 10 users, all right, and it's $0. If you want to use it for maybe your company or something more, enterprise, you can choose other plans that are available. So that's with Jira. It's basically just click, click, click. It's a GUI. Okay, so now the next one we're going to go into, and this is where we're going to take a deep dive and do a demonstration, is Git. So now Git is a version control system, all right, that allows developers to track changes in their code. All right. To use Git, you have to install it on your system. So you install the Git CMD or the Git bash on your system. And the installation link is provided here. All you have to do is just go to git-scm.com/downloads. All the links that are in this video will be put on the comment section. All right. So then another tool that is being confused that people always ask, what's the difference between Git and GitHub? So another tool that's been confused with Git is GitHub. So now it's important to know that GitHub is a web-based hosting service for Git repositories. Okay, Git and GitHub are not the same thing. You don't need GitHub to use Git, but you cannot use GitHub without using Git. Okay, if you don't want to use GitHub, there are other alternatives like GitLab, Bitbucket, and so on. So in this tutorial, we're going to be using Git with GitHub, all right? So we're going to look at the architecture for Git, all right? So at the top, we have working tree, staging area, local repo, remote repo. So basically, these are the various locations where your file resides. Then on the left-hand side here, you see new repo, update, changes, revert, diff. These are basically the actions that you perform, while working with Git. So in explaining the working tree, I would put it this way. So after you initialize, your directory with the git init command, we can see that a .git folder appears in that directory. Okay, so all the files and folders that we add to the Git repository that is residing outside the .git folder are known as the Git working tree. So now for the staging area. The staging area is they're basically files that are going to be part of your next commit, which lets Git know that, lets Git know what changes in the file are going to occur for the next commit. Local repository is basically the repo that's in your system that you have not yet pushed to the remote repository. And remember, I said in this tutorial, we're going to be using GitHub as our remote repository. So now, just running through this command here, there's git init. Git init is the first command you run when you have your working directory in your local system and you want to make it a Git repository. You're going to run git init to initialize, the repository. So then the next thing is git clone. Git clone is basically, for example, you go to Happy Cloud's GitHub profile, and instead of you to download the zip file and then upload it into your system again, you can easily just run a git clone command to clone my repository. So then there's git pull. Git pull is basically taking from what is in the remote repository and putting it in your local repository. There's also the git fetch, similar to a git pull, that is taking the updated things from the remote repository to your local repository. And there's git commit. You do a commit when you've done a change. Okay, I'm gonna see it today. Like you make a change either by adding a file in, let me say, like a, there's a development team and a new feature just came out. For that feature to be added to your repo, you have to do a commit. And after you do the commit, you then, add it to your directory and push. So I'm also going to show you how you, as in for people who do not like coding, there's an easy way to go about this. Instead of writing commands like git push, git clone, git pull, I mean, those things are most likely you can you can actually excel without doing them. Okay, and that's by using what is called GitHub Desktop in conjunction with Visual Studio Code. So with that, it's just a GUI. You just click, 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 and you don't even have to write all this, git commit, git push, because you just have to press, 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 and you get what you want. So then there's git checkout. So the git checkout command basically lets you navigate between the branches created by git branch. Okay, so checking out a branch updates the files in the working directory to match the version that is stored in that branch. Okay, and then it tells Git to record all the new commits on that branch. So think of it as a way to select which line of development you're working on. Then what is git diff? So diffing is basically a function that takes two input data sets and outputs the changes between them. So git diff is a multi-use git command that when executed, you'll be able to update the changes to your code. So now enough with the plenty talk and let's get right into the demo. All right, so we are going to begin by opening our Git terminal. And I basically like to use Git Bash. So in my terminal, I'm just going to go into my downloads folder because that's where I'm going to create my working directory. And I'm just going to call it DevOps Suite. So you have to do make directory. You have to create a directory first before you go into it. All right. So now cd into the directory you just created, and that's fine. The next thing I want to do is to open Visual Studio Code. That's basically because I want to create a file. I can do this from the command line, but I want to reduce the amount of codes that I write, especially for the viewers who are not code centric and prefer doing things via the GUI. So I'll just adopt that method. All right. So I'm just going to create a file, a HTML file. You can create any file you want, whether it's a Markdown file, a TXT file. All I'm trying to achieve here is I want a file that I'm going to be able to push to my remote repository, which in this case is GitHub. All right. Before I continue, it's important to know that you have to install Git, and you also have to have signed up to GitHub. Like I said, it's free to sign up to GitHub, so no need to be worried. So now the next thing I'm going to do is initialize that directory that I just created to make it a Git repository. So now it has been initialized. So the next thing I'm going to do is do git add dot. So this dot is saying every file that is in that directory, add it. If I just wanted one file in the directory, I'll just say git add index.html. But I'm going to do this. So the next thing is git status. Then we can see that we have our Git local Git repo. We have a new file here called index.html, which has not been committed yet. So before we continue, I want to go over to GitHub and create a repository that we're going to use. All right. So let's head over to the GitHub account and let's create a new repository. And I'll call it DevOps series. Scroll down and I'll just create repository. Okay, so like I said, we've done git init, we've done git add. Like I said, you can do git add readme.md or index.html, or you just use the dot to capture every file in that directory. So the next thing you want to run is git commit. All right, so you can just copy this command here and go back over here and paste. All right, so it's committed it. The next thing we want to do now is before we go any further, let us sign into our GitHub account. Okay, so for example, you just started using GitHub today. You need to sign into your Git terminal or GitHub account via the Git terminal. So to do that is git config global user name, and I'll just put my name, enter, and then for the email, user.email, and then I'll put email address. Okay, so now that's done. The next thing I want to do is to go into just following this command. You can just go into this branch or create a branch called git branch main, called main. Okay, and so now we've done that. The next thing we want to do is still go back to that place, copy this command, copy, go back. All right. So now after doing that, we want to push what we just done to main. Git push -u origin main. So that's done. So now we've pushed it to main. Let's go back to the repository and refresh. Hello, viewers. My name is Kachi. This is a short break just to urge and ask you to like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel. This channel is used to bring educative videos that are relevant in the information technology world. We bring videos on web development, cloud computing, DevOps, and even artificial intelligence (AI). But the videos are not just limited to that. We also provide videos as they are relevant to the community. We ask that you support us through your likes and subscription. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you as part of our subscribers. Now, let's get back to business. All right, so now you can see that we have our first file in our GitHub repository called index.html. So now we've been able to successfully use commands like git init, git add, git status, um, git branch, git remote, git push, and so on and so forth. Now, let's look at other things you can do. So now you have your GitHub profile, or like you have even a GitHub profile of someone else that you would like to clone the repository. There are two things you can do. If I, for example, go back to one of my repositories, let me say this one, and I come here, and what I want to do now is clone this repository. I can just come here, copy this command, and then I'll run git clone and that URL. But I'm not going to do this here because it's going to kind of like interrupt every other thing that I'm doing. What this will do is, let's say you have a fresh working directory and you do git clone. It's going to copy all the files that are here, all these files that you see here, is going to now be cloned into your local repository. All right. Okay, so let's just run it through so you can have an idea of what I'm talking about. So now I'm cloning this repository into this directory. And so now it's doing and it is done. So let me just go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I can see that I now have a different folder here called Java Web Build. Okay. So now if you come back here, let's go back to the repository that we just created. Let's do that. So this one I just created. If we want to, as you can see, what is showing here, that folder isn't showing here yet. We can push it here in various ways. As you can see, for this scenario, we can do another git commit and give the commit a different name and then do a git push. For example, if I run git status, it's going to tell you that Java Web Build hasn't been committed yet. But now I don't want to use this approach. I want to use a different approach to show you how you can do your commit. Okay. Other approach that I'm talking about requires the use of GitHub Desktop. So it's basically for people who do not like using the command line or who don't like writing codes as simple as git init or git push. So to use this approach, you have to have GitHub Desktop downloaded on your system. It's very easy. You can just go on Google and type download GitHub Desktop. It's an exe file that you can just use to install in your system. So this is our repository we're working with, right? I'll just click here and then you see open with GitHub Desktop, and I'll say open. What it's now going to do for you is to clone. So that git clone command, it's not me to run it, it's going to do it for you. So it's going to clone that repository to my system now. I'll click on clone. So if you want to work on any directory that you see online, and you probably maybe fork the repository or even want to clone it to your own system, you can just use this approach. Okay. So the next thing is to click on open with Visual Studio Code. So then it opens. Also, if you don't have VS Code on your system, it's really helpful if you want to go through this route. It's easy to use, and trust me, you would love it. All right. So now what we've done so far is just to clone the repository to our local system. So instead of running git clone, we just use GitHub Desktop to do that. So now you see this here. This is this will show blue with either one or two when you have a commit to be made to your environment. So okay, let's do what we did initially, but then let's do this. New terminal. Instead of going to new terminal, an easy way to work with this is to right click and say open in integrated terminal. So to open the exact folder that you're working on your terminal instead of you having to do cd and then entering the directory. So you see, I told you GitHub Desktop in conjunction with Visual Studio Code makes your job very easy. So let's say that we still want to go and clone that repository that we initially did, which was the Java build one. So let's just go back there and get the URL. So just kind of replicating what we just did on the terminal. So I'm just going to run git clone and then this. So now, just like the other time, it's cloning the exact thing into this folder, and it's still running, not yet done. Just gonna give it some minutes. All right. So now you see everything here has been cloned. So now the next thing is, since we have new files that have been added to our environment, we want to do a commit, right? So then we want to come here and create a commit. An easy way to go about that is I'm just going to make a bit of change, nothing serious. Just Control S. Okay, so now it's saying that one change has been noticed. So instead of me running git commit hyphen m and then putting my message, this is just super easy. Do click here and then I'll just do second commit. All right, commit. So then after commit, remember the next thing we did on our command line was push. Instead of you doing the push, you can just click here, sync changes, or you can even go back to your GitHub desktop and then it will show you push to origin. So if I just click push to origin, it is doing the same thing as git push. So you see, that is why I said this is an alternative to people who do not like using the command line. So now it's pushed it, and let's go back to our repository. Let's go back to that repository, DevOps series. Okay, coming up, coming up, coming up. So now you can see that the second folder that we put here has been committed to this repository. And then we also did some changes here. That's why you can see second commit. The changes were done 1 minute ago. So this is basically how to use Git. There's still like a lot to learn, but this is a starting point. There are other things like creating pull requests, merging, and so on and so forth. But as an individual, you can start from here and start playing around with Git. To learn more about Git and GitHub, you can reach out to us via the contact us form on our website. The link is provided on the screen, or you can send us an email at hcstutors at harpycloudsolutions.com. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and let's continue to do this. See you in the next episode.